Hello, welcome everyone to August. This is August, right? Yeah. The August Focus Friday. That's better. On the screen, you see our housekeeping. The main thing here is the session is being recorded, so be forewarned. If you have any questions throughout the session, please be sure to use the Q&A or the chat, and we will hopefully see them and address them as you ask them. If not, when we get a pause point, we will then go ahead and check and see if there's any outstanding questions that were asked. Presentations will be emailed to you during the week after the session. So usually it's in the beginning of the week. So figure Monday, Tuesday. That will have and from my case, the presentations, the PowerPoints, as well as a link to rewatch the video. All right, Renee, do you have anything to say?
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Appreciate it.
All right, so let's just jump in. If I can find where my mouse went. There we go. Okay, close that. Some things I want to mention is next week on Wednesday, we have our August virtual user group, which is enhancements in the WebFOCUS Designer. So some additional WebFOCUS Designer things that you can learn about. And you can get here by going to www.ivi.com/events. And then this is where you can register. We also have in October 14th is our Golden Summit session, which is in New York. I will be there. I will be talking about most likely Focus Studio and the benefits of using Folklog on the Focus product on the mainframe. Joining me will be Mark Nesson, who will be talking about the Open Data Hub. And if you want to know something specific, if you want your own session, there's an email. Shay, do you know what that email is offhand? Is it just you?
I can throw it in the chat if that helps everyone out. There's a form to fill out.
Okay. Yeah, well, if you can. So there's a form you can fill out where you can request your own session. So if there's something you want to learn about, you have some code that isn't working too well, or you want to see if you can make it better, then go ahead and fill this out, and hopefully you can do a session that I can help you with directly. Mostly I'll do tips and techniques, but anything mainframe related, anything you want to know, put it on there, and we will try to accommodate you. I think I covered everything. Yep, I'm pretty sure. All right, close that. Without further ado, then I will jump into the first topic, which is the alternative of join, match, and more. So match and more, the other join command, is kind of like pork, the other white meat. All right, so when you do a report, most of the time, your report is going to require data from multiple data sources. So normally we would do a join. We join file A to file B, and we have different options like a left outer, right out, left outer, full outer, and inner. We also have right outer for any of those databases that will support that. But we're not talking about those now because we've done several sessions on those in the past. Today, I'm going to talk about match and more. So what match is, match will let you take a table request, take the output of the table request, and then merge the results of that table request to the output of a second table request. So again, we still have two entities. Instead of saying join file A to file B, we're going to match, and then we're going to talk about the different files as old and new. Old is basically the first file that's mentioned in the match command. New would be the second one. And then the result of that goes into a hold file. Your matching structure is controlled by the bys. So if you have identical by fields, then we're going to try to match up on those identical by fields. The work Wheres are limited to the specific request that they're in. So if you have a where in the new part of the code, it's only affecting that retrieval. And if you have a where in the old, if you have where in the old or where in the new, it's only applicable to that section. Okay, after match hold will then tell us where we're going to put the file when we're done. And normally we go to a hold file, but in the newer releases, we have a lot more flexibility. So the by fields control the column order as well as how you're connecting the fields. So if I have two files that I'm running against car, let's say I do one file, I'm doing summing dealer cost by country. The second one, I'm summing retail cost by country. Since I have the same by country on both sides, then we're going to match on the country values. They have to have the same name. So if they don't have the same name, but they are technically the same data, then it won't let me copy it. Okay. All right, thanks, Shay. If it's the same data, even though it doesn't have the same name, you can use the by field name as, and then use the as name to match it to the one in the old file. And then that will still do the join structure. All right, so Shay is not able to copy and paste it into the chat. So what we'll do is we'll include it in the follow-up when you get the information next week with the presentations and the link to the video. You can have up to 16 levels in a single match request. The match keys don't have to be the same, and we'll see what happens. So if they're not the same, you're basically doing a line-by-line comparison. Matching keys output in one column. Non-matching keys have distinct columns. So if you have a matching key, you only see that column in the output one time. But if you have a non-matching key, you're going to see each of the keys for each of your requests. The output record is created based on your common key. Keys plus associated verb objects. So whatever you're asking for in each request, you're going to get all of the output from both files, from both requests in your output file. In the newer releases, we have a new setting, set match column order, and it's going to be set to grouped or ungrouped. And I'm going to talk about that a little later to explain what they're doing. The current behavior right now is grouped. But if you want to revert back to the old behavior, and I'm going to show you why you might want to do that, then you can set it to ungrouped. Using printer sum. So if you're summing, again, this is think of it just as one table request, another table request, and then you're merging them together. So just like any other table request, summing aggregates, everything's aggregated by the bys. And let's go to print is detail. Same thing, everything is grouped and sorted by the by. Match gives you a lot more flexibility over join. And what I mean by that is in join, we talked about you have a left outer, an inner, and full outer, and now we have right outer. In match, you have all of these possibilities. You can do old or new, which gives you everything back from both requests. So that would be like a union. You have old and new, which would be the inner. But then you have old, not new. So you have records from the first request that have no reference at all in the second request. We have old nor new, which is basically the negativity of the inner. So you get everything that doesn't match. And then if you want old, you get everything in the old, which would be like a left outer join. And then new gives you everything that's on the right side. And I am so surprised that I do not have any sample code yet. So in this example here, I'm showing several levels of match. So I'm matching GG sales, and I'm doing a request, which is summing units and budget units by product. Then I'm going to do an old or new, because I'm getting the full output from both requests, to summing region by dollars and by dollars. Now, for those of you that use the product for quite a while, you're probably asking, well, why couldn't I just do sum altogether? But if you notice, we're summing at different by-field levels. The result of this file then will give us product, unit, and by dollars from the first request, and then region dollars and by dollars from the second request. So that will be our output fields. We're going to take that result now and match it to a GG sales again, but this time we're summing units and bud units by category. So if you notice, we're adding units and bud units here several times. Oops, wrong way. We're going to then take the output of that and do one more where we're going to do this. We're going to add the sum of dollars by date. So our final hold file has all of these fields, and if you notice, bud dollars, and units are referenced several times in the output file, in the hold file. So if I was doing a report now against this hold file, I couldn't directly get the product or the budget dollars, because I would see the first occurrence if I only reference bud dollars. So what I use then is the alias that's created in the hold file in my query. So here I'm going to print product units, bud dollars, region dollars, bud dollars, and then I'm going to go E08 for total category units, because that's the, when I ran the request, that particular field for units came up with an alias of E08. So if you have code that's doing match, you might see this E notation, which is using the alias name. Why do I mention this? Well, I mention this because in the new behavior, where I said we have that match column order setting, which is defaulted to groups, we changed the order of the columns in your hold file. What we do is we will take all of the same by fields into the order of the by fields and propagate all the verb objects to the same level. So if one of my table requests is by country by car and another is by country by car by model, then I'm still going to have country and car, but then I have another segment that goes by model as a child segment. If I have a third table that does by country by model, now those fields will get propagated up to the first request. So we're keeping all of the key fields, all of the common key levels of fields in the same, at the same level, in the same segment. So if you were to upgrade and you ran code that you had before, you're probably not going to get the same output that you were expecting, because now E08 might have moved up into a higher segment. So in this case, you would want to revert back to match column order as ungrouped. Okay, here's the output. All right, user, which is basically what I just went over. Why did we do this? Well, the new behavior allows the hold file now to be a FOCUS or XFOCUS database, because now it's a hierarchical data structure. Before it was just a hold file, it was just a flat file. So now this gives you some type of hierarchy to your output, which then can make life a little easier. Gives you a little more flexibility. All right, finally some code. So in this code, we're doing match file, file 1, which is in the red. File 1 has 3 columns, N, country, D cost, and you see the values. And then we're going to alternate the verb between sum and print to see how the different verbs will affect the output. We're going to use the verb for country D cost, because that's what's in F1, by N. So the syntax for match is we're going to say match file name, your request, But instead of putting an end after the query, we're going to say run, because we want to run now that table request. Then we say file F2, so file second file, or the new file, and then the request for verb objects buys and wheres. And then we say after match hold, and then we have our match, how we want our output. In this case, we're doing old or new. We could have done any of the combinations that we saw before. If these are the only two outputs, then we can put an end, and then we can do a table request against hold to get our final report. Any where conditions will need to be in its one little section. So match file 1, you would have a where, and then file 2, you would have a where. So that it's not like more where they kind of cross over. Okay, if we're done, we do an end. So let's see what the different combinations of sum and print will do here. So if I have sum as my first verb and sum as my second verb, I'm summing country and D cost by N. So if I look at F1 by itself and I sum country and D cost, I get for N1, I'm going to get the value England, and total D cost would be 3,000, which I'm seeing in the red text in the output. For 2, I'm going to see Japan and 7,000, so that all checks out. And then for F2, because I'm doing a sum, I'm going to get, what am I going to get? Well, I'm summing by N1, so N1 has car, Jaguar, and Jensen. So if you remember, when we sum alpha fields in FOCUS, you will get the last value that we encounter. So that's why we see Jensen, and then we add up the R cost to get the 11,000. For N2, the last value we see for car is Toyota, and the sum for that is also 11,000. If I change the first verb to print, then I get all my detail. So I see the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, the 2 Englands, the 2 Japans. And since we're matching up on 1, and 1 is a sum, we're going to see the same value for both lines, because the result of that table, of that file 2 request, is going to give me 1 row output for 1 row for 2, that 1 row having Jensen and 11 and Toyota and 11. If I swap them and I do sum first and then print, then notice we get the 2 rows for England 3,000. But on the F2 side, then we see all of the individual detail rows. And then finally print. So we're matching 1. So we get England 1,000, Jaguar 5,000. Something that happens behind the scenes when you do a table request is we will add an additional by field that you don't see, and it's by folk list. So basically, you're matching each folk list. So the folk list is 1, 2, 3, 4 for F1, 1, 2, 3, 4 for F2, and we just match them up. So basically, you're getting a line by line comparison and output. All right, any questions on match? Can you do match file in Designer? I'm not sure. We were able to do it in App Studio. So hopefully there's going to be something that will allow that. Renee, do you happen to know if we can do match in Designer?
No, we cannot do match in Designer, but in the data tab, you can actually create your own extracts. You can do joins, you can do unions and intersects and everything. So you have that type of control.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's jump into more. So more is in the product because you might have several databases that have similar data, but not the same file structure. So I might have, through the ages, you might have a database where you added fields to it. Or you might have 2 completely separate sources. But you have, let's say you have employee number and salary. Well, you have it from one file, but then you might have like a payroll file. So you have an HR file and a payroll file. both of them have the employee ID and salary, but you might have more information in payroll, deductions, all those kind of fun things. But the formats are the same across all your files. More then allows you to take different files as long as they have the same fields or field type of data. We're going to see the rules for that. And create one report that then merges everything together into a final output. So where we say join is a horizontal join, where you're joining file A to file B, and now you have access to all of the columns. In this case, I call this a vertical join because you're just appending more data from a different data source, as long as you have the same field names and formats. More lets you retrieve data from any data source. So unlike data sources will work fine. You can have a focus data source, DB2, IMS, vSAM, Oracle. As long as the field names are the same name, same format, then you can use more. The data appears as if it came from a single source and is currently supported for table, graph, and match file. All right, so in your request, we're going to have table file 1. We're going to have sum and our verb objects, and then our by fields. And then we're going to say more. And then we're going to say file 2. And then we're going to show that query. So it runs sequentially. So the first query runs, gets data. The second query runs, gets data, and then merges it to the output of the first query. One thing you need to be careful of, though, is if you're referencing a field that's not in all of the data sources that you're reporting against, you have to account for that. So how do we do that? We use a define. So this just shows we create the different data sources, and then we merge the output together. So everything's based on the fields in the main request, because you only have one full request. So the only thing you have in your main request is table file 1, your verb objects, and your sort order. Then you can have a where. The where is only for that one particular request. Then when you do your more and you identify file 2, the only thing you really need there is the where condition, because we already know what fields were taken from the main request. Okay, again, all fields must be available. So for alpha fields, you have to match the same type and the same length. So if it's an A10, you can match it with another A10. If it's an A10V, you have to match it with another A10V. For numeric integers, floating point decimal, the type must be the same. Packed type and scale must be equal. So these are all the rules of how the different fields across your different data sources have to match up. You cannot use text, and I mention that because I know I've seen some cases come in where customers are using text. The alternative to text is to change it to a blob. And in the latest releases, we also have string data types. So in this request, table file car, print dealer cost, retail cost by country, by car, by model, where country equals England, Japan, or Italy. We get, I'm sorry, we don't get yet. So this is the master for the car file. Notice we have country, car, model, dealer cost, retail cost. We're going to add data from this car DB2 that I have, which is a DB2 table, which has country, car, model, dealer cost, retail cost. So it's pretty similar. And then I have car fixed, which has everything but model. So I'm going to do table file car, print dealer cost, retail cost by country, by car, by model, where country equals England or Japan or Italy. And then I'm going to do a more file car DB2, and then I'm going to do a more file car fix. So I'm going to take all of the records in car DB2 because there's no where condition in there, and I'm going to take all of the records from car fix. When I run this, I get an error because it says no match is found for the field of main request model. Because if you remember, CarFix did not have a model in it. So in order to account for it, we're going to use a define for CarFix that says model, and it's just going to put the value from CarFix. That's the only thing we changed here. We added one define, and now I get output. And all of the red lines are the ones coming from CarFix. So you can see that the model now says from CarFix. I added in here define file CarFix. I added a source field. So source 810 CarFix. For car, source is car. And then for car DB2, the source is car DB2. And then I added that to my output print source. So now I can see specifically where the data came from on this particular line. Do you need to do that? Probably not, because you're probably summing and you only care about the total values. But just to show you that you can add additional things to each file, but you're going to have to provide the values yourself. All right, any questions on more? Any questions on match? Any questions on anything? All right, I will stop sharing and pass it over to Renee.
Thank you, Walter. All right, so let me share my screen. Give me a moment.
There we go.
All right. And you should be seeing the hub right now, right, for WebFOCUS?
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. You got a great presentation with Match and More. Fantastic stuff. Very cool. Today's presentation on the WebFOCUS designer side is a continuation of our last discussion with active reports, analytics anywhere, or IDA. And regardless of the name, very powerful feature. And last session, what I did was I reviewed all the features from an end user perspective. And I did that to level set everyone so you're aware of what the features and the capabilities are. And so today's presentation demonstration truly is to really go over the customization that's available to control it. Now, I will be showcasing it through the language, but certainly you could have style sheets set up that would have the code in it, and that could be selected within Designer. So everything can be done, for the most part, within Designer, and you don't need to have it where you're manually editing or changing it. So I'm going to go into my content, and I'm going to edit this active report, Analytics Anywhere, that I had created originally in Designer and then just adjusted it in terms of the style sheet to show what types of customizations are available. And if you're familiar with FOCUS, you might be aware of some of the user interface capabilities that we had, the options that were available. And that's kind of where this lends itself to this type of customization plus a little bit extra. So just as for reference purposes, if I were to go into this IA HTML test report and just edit, so I'm in Info Assist. Again, this is just for reference. And I go to Format. You have Analytic Document options. So there are options here like menu and have the type of user and what you can control. What you see here is mostly what I'm going to be talking about today in terms of colors also and advanced. We are working on in Designer to make this UI available within Designer itself. But I thought this was a good time to talk about it from a language perspective, style sheet perspective, so that you can still leverage it regardless of whether it's available in the UI in Designer at this time. But you can see it from an from an Info Assist perspective, the options, and some options might be available in one and not the other, just to be aware of that. But I'm going to go over the ones that are available with in Designer supported with AR version 2. AR version 1 is our older version of Active. So I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to come back here into the procedure that I had opened. And again, I originally developed this in Designer, and it's similar to the request that we worked on in the last session, where I had 3 by fields, product category, product subcategory, and model, have to be a hierarchy. And then I was summing by revenue, quantity sold, and gross profit. And then I had also had a few no printed fields, MSRP, discount, and cost of goods. And you see I highlighted those. Now let me just scroll down a little bit further. So where you can see the style sheet section here that I have. And you can see I have things commented out. Again, all of this can be added within a style sheet, and you might have different versions depending on different types of users that would access that particular request, that particular visualization, active report that's generated, to give them certain capabilities where other users would get other capabilities, maybe more limited in scope. So you can see here I'm in the style sheet, type equal report, and then I'm going to uncomment. So maybe I should just run it as is, just so that you can see the output. And this, again, should be familiar from our last session. And let it just run. And you can see we have our active report output. Remember, we have our little sort icons. We can cut here and see the options that are available. We have our menuing options, etc. This was all reviewed in the last session. So one thing to notice is you'll notice the column titles, right, are automatically frozen with a version. We always leave them frozen, right? But what if you wanted to freeze, besides the column titles, the actual column themselves, maybe the sort fields? So we actually give you that capability. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to uncomment freeze column equal freeze dash column equal N3, right? So it's saying stop the freeze at the N3 column, and that would be here, because product category goes by sort fields first. So product category would be N1, the subcategory would be N2, and model would be N3. So if I say N3 and I run this, now because the width of the report is actually, it's a very, it's not that wide, the browser window is large enough for it, so you don't see the columns frozen. But if I actually make an adjustment here, and let's just reduce it down so that I can see, I get a scroll bar down here, right, for that scroll, but it actually froze the 3 sort fields. And now certainly if I went back in and changed this and made this in N2, for example, and ran it, and let me just make sure I did close that out. Okay. We'll let that run. Once we get that output, just reduce the size just so that we can get a scroll bar, and you can already see the difference, right? Product category and product subcategory columns are frozen. I can scroll down and it matches up. So it's not just freezing the column titles. Now we can have the ability to freeze the columns as well with active. Technically what's supported is you can use this feature with by fields. I've seen you go a little further with columns and it seems to work, but officially it's supposed to be with by fields only. So let me revert that back and I'll uncomment. So page location. So if I just run it again, just to refresh everyone's memory, by default, right, you see the page information on the bottom here, and I could page through if I want. I could change the number, I could go to the end. And so what if I don't want that page option to be displayed, right? So if I uncomment out, so I say page dash location equal off, lo and behold, it'll run. And there's an interesting phenomenon that you'll see, because if I scroll down, I'm not getting all the records. Where is video production? And it's going to default to whatever the line numbers are defaulted to, which is 57 in this case, but there was 158 records. Now, I do have the option, remember from the last time going to the ellipse, if I say show records and I say show all, then it'll actually show me all of the records and I'll have all of them there. You don't want to put a user probably in that type of position. So what we normally do is if you were to say page dash location off, you would also want to add lines dash per dash page that you see I've uncommented equal to unlimited. Now in this case, when I run it, the page location will be off, but you will get all the records actually being displayed. Now certainly the user still has the ability to come in here and say, hey, show records, I only want to see 20, and then they're not going to have the paging to go through it. So that might be where you want to turn that option off, allow pagination. So let me just show you that real quick. So down on line 58, if I uncomment allow dash pagination, Now when I run it, I won't have the page location. It'll have all the lines available in that one page. And now, right, so let's just scroll, make sure we see all of it. We do. And then if I click the little ellipse, notice I don't see the show records option anymore. So just to be aware that you want to consider that capability in combination with each other. Now, another thing that I could do is let me uncomment. I'm not going to say lines per page unlimited. I'm going to put that comment back. Page location off. You can see where it was defaulting, but I also have the capability if I want. You can say bottom if you want explicitly. And just run so that you can see that. You can see at the bottom explicitly, or I could even say top, just to be aware that those capabilities, so it's not just off for that. Let's say that as well. And let that run just so that you can see at the top. So we give you a lot of type of control over that. Let me just undo. Doesn't really matter, but I'll comment that out. And I kind of want to go to lines per page. So remember when I run this, just by default, because lines is 57, that's why you see, now it could be different for your environment if they've set up something globally, but I have one of 57, so I get 3 pages based on that. But I can change it. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want something like 20 lines per page coming in. Now, if I do that and I run it, you'll see I have more pages, right? Because I have 158 records total. So you'll see I have 8 pages, 20 each. But I still have now the show records, where I could change, maybe to 40 records per page. But if I come back, right, and I say, give me the default, it's going to come back to whatever lines per page was the default at the time of this was run, which is 20 in this case. So if I come back here and I uncomment out that line, so if it defaults to 57 in my vanilla environment, when I run it, I have 57 per page. Now, if I come in here and I say 35, I have 35 per page with 5 pages. But if I come back here and I say show all, the default, it's 57. Goes back to, so it's whatever the lines per page is at the time of execution. And remember, I'm running completely disconnected. This output is, it's not being cached to the reporting server as we discussed as an option that's available with this format. All right, so what else is another great option? So if I were to run this request the way it is, just as a refresher, you have the capability of, the little ellipse to give you menu options here, right? Now, I have the option to completely turn that off with the AR_show_menu bar. So if I run that with that turned off, you'll notice now that I don't have that capability. That's no longer an option available to me. That's a big control, because sometimes you do want to limit the scope. Now, users still have the ability to sort. They still have the options that are available here, assuming that you haven't turned or disabled any of these options, but they no longer have that extra menu available to them. Okay, comment that out. So allow calc equal off. So let me come, and I actually should run this again as a refresher. So when you're running the output and you get the output, the calc option is, remember you had the ability, if it's an alphanumeric, show column total, and then with alphanumerics you have count and distinct. And with numerics, you'll have that show column total, but you also have more options because it's a numeric, sum, average, min, max, count, distinct, and you have the show percent of total capability. Now, if I were to say I don't want to allow the user to be able to have that type of control in that output, that particular active analytics anywhere output, then you'll see when I click, you won't see that option there. And then for revenue, you'll see you still have the visualize option. That capability for the data bars is still there, but the rest of that calculation capability is not. We've turned that off. Now, for comments, if you remember, and I'll just run this real quick. Remember, it was just when you were at a cell level, right? You can comment, you get the screen, and you could add a comment if you wish. So if you want to turn that capability off, all you have to do is say allow dash comments equal off. And if we run that, you can see it's pretty straightforward. It's just knowing what feature does what, I think, is the key part. So now when I click a cell, I don't have that comments option any longer if I turn that off. And again, combinations thereof that you can do with these features. Now remember export capability, and I'll run that without turning it off yet. The export capability we have also right here. But we also have the capability that if we do create a visualization, I'll just do chart with some product category and with revenue. We also have the export capability here as well on a separate visualization that we create. So if we turn the export feature off, would allow dash export equal off. Then when we come through, we'll see that not only is the little ellipse menu updated, but as well as if we were to create a separate visualization, export is not available there as well. And for filter, you remember the filter option is a separate section. So if, let me just run it again. I probably kept the other one up, but it's easier just to remember to do this. And I'll just run it to show you where is the filter capability. So you remember you have filter capabilities here, right? Filter and highlight, depending on alphanumeric, as well as date. So if I uncomment that out, what's the impact? And we let it run. And now you can see that whole section with the filter and highlight is now unavailable to the user to access. And again, the options are there for you to have to control. Now remember that chart option was available because that's how I was creating the visualization, that little chart tab right in the middle with roll up and pivot. So if I say allow dash chart equal to off, and we run it with that, so that feature is disabled, you'll see that for product category, right? You only see the roll up and the pivot tabs are now available. You no longer see the chart. And the same thing if I were to go to a numeric field. Now I can actually maybe turn this whole section off by turning off the 3 features. So I can turn off roll up and pivot as well. And so if I just uncomment those 2, so now all 3 are disabled just so that you can see the impact. Now you'll see that whole section is not available, and we actually shift over the filter highlight section. So you'll see that here, right? So normally that would be here, but we just shift it over, and you'll see the same thing when I look at revenue. Okay, but I'll turn those back on. Oops. And it helps if my mouse will cooperate. Okay, so pagination I already showed you. That was with the show records. The visualize. So remember for numeric fields, you have that little visualize checkbox, which would do data bars, right? So let me just showcase that real quick. So if I have revenue and I decide to say visualize, right? You see you get the little data bars here by default, right? And this happens to be all positive values, so that's why. But you can handle numeric values as well on the other side of the bar. That splits the positive with the negative for the visualized data bars. Okay, so we want to turn that option off. We just say allow dash visualize equal off. Remember that was just strictly for numerics. And now we come in, and when I click revenue, you'll see now that that visualize checkbox is no longer available here by turning that feature off. Now, here's a good one. Allow hide. So actually, before I turn hide off, just as a refresher, remember we have 3 no printed fields, right? MSRP, discount, and cost of goods. So also on the fields, right, we can click hide to hide a column, right, and do that checkbox, and then we can bring it back. And then notice also in the ellipse, right, we have show columns, and we could show all, or the fields that are currently hidden, they stay hidden, right? So what does this feature do? And then remember also, new and edit capabilities do show those no printed columns available, right? As well as, let me show edit, right? So you see those no printed as available. And if you do click the little ellipse, you'll see that hide is checked where it's not checked here. Okay, so let's turn hide off. So allow-hide is off. We run it. And just wait a moment for the output to be generated. And now product category, you'll see, right? You don't see that hide checkbox anymore. Same thing. So for any of the columns. And also look at the little ellipse, right? It doesn't have the show columns option anymore. However, if you go to new, you will see the hidden no printed fields of the request. They are still available to you with that particular feature. There is an allow-no print that's different. That will give you control to not have those fields available. And then you can see with edit, the same thing. So the thing to be aware of with hide takes away the checkbox, and it takes away from the ellipse, the main menu, the show columns feature. But for those two features, the new and edit function capabilities that are allowed, the no printed fields will still be available to the user. And that might be necessary. So we allow for that option. With this particular feature. Okay, let me put that and comment it back. Now print, if you remember, is also, it's on the main request in the ellipse menu, right? But also, if I were to create a visualization in this menu too, you also have print capability. If I close this out and I uncomment allow-print equal off, as you can see, when I run it, let's give it a moment. You can see print is no longer available here. And then also if I create a visualization, it's been disabled. It's no longer visible on this menu as well. Okay. Now restore, remember restore, you have that capability. So restore back to the original request, yarn. After you've made your changes, created visualization, you want to go back to what it was originally when it was run. Even though it's in disconnected mode, it goes back to its original state. That's what the restore capability is here for. There is also, if you expand this, because you could have potentially a compound document, restore dashboard is available here. It will not change this and make that disabled. It doesn't disable that. It does disable the original one. I can come back here, right? Restore original is there. So let's just disable it just to show case what it actually impacts. So allow-restore equal off. And I run that. And you'll see that you don't see restore here. But if I expand it, you will see restore dashboard will restore the original one. So it's still there. That capability is there. They need to know to go to that. And again, that's because you might have more complex documents. So that's why the capability is for the specific page request only. And then also notice that there is a save changes option. So if I put, let's put restore back and let's uncomment the allow-save change equal to off. Now, if I run that, you'll notice in the ellipse menu, save changes is not available any longer, right? But if I expand, you will see save changes is still available here. Comment that out. Now, another cool option is the tools, allow-tools equal off. So we already know that new and edit are function capabilities that are available. But if you say allow-tools equal to off, then that will disable those. They won't be available on the menu system for the user to utilize. And so when I run and I look at the little ellipse menu, I don't see the new and edit at the top like I normally would. And if I create a visualization on this menu, they're not available either. So we disable it completely. Put that back in. And for no print, that's a little bit different. This is the kind of the other option if you don't use hide. So now if I do no print, let's run that. So allow-no print off. It's a little bit different. And what you will see is I'll look at product category. I can still see I can hide columns, right? If I look at the ellipse menu, I don't see the show columns capability, right? So it's not showing where hidden fields. I can't show it. I can hide columns that exist already in the request and then re-show them, right? So I can do this. I could say hide, product category, and now show columns will come up. And I could just say, show that. And so now, because everything shown, right, show columns is not shown because even though there's no printed fields in the request, we say allow dash no print equal off. You're not going to access them. And in addition, if I go to new, you'll see the measures no longer have those no printed fields available, as well as if I go to the edit capability, the summary has the no printed fields are not there. The hidden fields are not there as well. So they might be part of the request, but they're not where you can interact with them. So that's the difference between allow dash hide capability and allow dash no print capability when you turn them off. Okay. And then I'll put that one back in. And our last one is allow sort. And that's one typically you're going to probably want to keep, but if you want to turn it off, you certainly can. Allow dash sort equal off. If I run that, what you'll see is that you no longer have the sort icons. And also remember, you used to have a sort, ascending, descending option here at the top above the show column total, and you no longer have that when you turn that off. So there's no way to resort. And that's true if I create a visualization separate from this as well. So that kind of covers the main settings that I wanted to go through, but I do want to go into a different section with styling, but it also impacts a little bit with settings as well. Let me close this one out, and I'm going to open a different request. And let's just edit. And again, this is a request again that was kind of created in Designer and just adjusted. So it's the same basic request that we just looked at. But on top of this, what I'm doing is I've kind of taken out the style sheet. And I've added some other things here in the style sheet that can impact an active request. And plus, there's a few other things that aren't added here yet that I want to cover. So with the time that we have allotted, let me just run this output first and then review the impact of what you're seeing here in the style sheet with the output that's generated. So I'm going to run that and position it about like that. That's probably good. And colors might not be desirable, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. And certainly you can see I can scroll down. Here's the data. There's 3 pages. It's 157. So lines per page is 57 of the 158 records. And so you see your page information. And there's also calculation columns that we can set up automatically. So let me just go through here what we have. So on line 44, I have commented page. And right below that, I have type equal report, object equals status dash area with the color of green and the back color of yellow. So you can see here through the page information, right? The back color is yellow and the text is green. For the interactive components, you'll still have the control the way it is, but that's just so that you can control and recognize that you can still maneuver through the pages, go to the end or the front, depending on where you're at, or change the page number. But you can see, right, that I impacted using type equal report, object equals status dash area, color of green and the back color yellow, I impacted the display. This is how you can impact an active report, Analytics Anywhere report, through the style sheet versus cascading style sheet CSS, which I will talk about as well. Okay, what else can I do? Maybe, remember also we talked about page location, right, in the other one. So I could, if I want to do, I could say type equal report, comma, page dash location equal to bottom, like I showcased just in the prior example, and that would put that at the bottom of the output. So I could do that if I wanted to. Online, and actually I have it right here. So if I wanted to close this out just to showcase it and just uncomment that out just to run it. Just to stress it with this example versus what I did before, you can see now the page location is at the bottom. rather than, or off if you wanted it completely off. And we discussed that already. So let me come back, and I'm going to, let me just run this again, just so we have it for comparison purposes. Come back. Okay. So on line 48, I kind of impacted the menu options with the active output. So on line 48, you can see type of report, object equal menu. The color is yellow, the text will be yellow, the back color aqua, but the hover dash color is white, and the hover back color is purple, right? That's line 48 right here. So if I come back, just highlight it for your reference, and then bring this back up so that it's on top of it. Now you'll see when I click the little ellipse menu, might not be the greatest color combination, but it stresses the idea. So you can see where I hover over, right, it's white text with the purple background, but where otherwise on the menu, you'll see yellow text with the aqua background. So it matches what I have on styled on line 48 using the object equal menu. And then same thing for the cells. If I click that, you'll see that same capability styling has taken place. Okay. Now on line 50, I'll stress that out here and then bring it up again for comparison. So if you notice, if I hover over the rows, right, the back color, so it's saying hover using object equal current dash row on type of report, I can do a hover dash back color of orange, and then the back color can be pink, like if I were to highlight, excuse me, let me just highlight row. You can see that. And then I can just clear that off. Oh, did it again. Unhighlight all, but you can see how it impacted that as well. Now, also here, I have a section here starting on line 52 and then further down that I want to go over. And this is very cool, in my opinion, because yes, we give you type equal report, object equal calc dash area with a color of red. So red text with a back color and that RGB, so you don't have to use the actual color names. You can use RGB numbers as well. So RBG and the parentheses with the numbered values for the colors. And certainly you can see here, this is what that's generating. So you can see it has a background of a light orangey color based on that RGB value. And then you can see the text is actually red. And you can control the position of that as well to say you want that on the bottom. And I actually have that on line 43. I'll show that in a minute. But what's really good is that instead of making the user have to go in and actually, you know, do the calculations, you can actually set them up in advance for the user in the original output. So you can see I have type equal report on line 54, column equal N1, so that's the first by field, that would be product category. And you can see I said calculation equals CNT dot DST dot for count distinct, comma dollar sign, right? And you can see it has the total count distinct 7 is being displayed because there's 7 distinct product categories. And then for the next one, I said for column N4, right, which is revenue, right, because it's 3 by fields, and then revenue is the first verb object, so that's N4. I said, you know what, give me the calculation of sum, so you can see the total sum being generated. And then for N6, which is gross profit, I did total count. So I just did a count, CNT dot, and it gave me the total count of 158. And it doesn't mean that I can't go back in here now and change and say, hey, I want average. Or maybe, you know, okay, I could change it to average. Maybe I don't want to see it right now. But I can uncheck it. So you have that capability as well. But I wanted to showcase that you really do have more control than maybe you're aware of with active that you can do up front to save the user having to go and make those kind of changes. They can still do it. The capability is still there. But you have the control, that level of control within the style sheet. And certainly just to also address here, I have it up here on line 43. If I wanted to, I can uncomment and say calc dash location at the bottom. So maybe if I don't want that at the top, let's give that a second to run. You can see now I have the calc location at the bottom of it rather than at the top. So you have that control as well. Let me reverse that and let me just run just to put output again. Make sure I closed it out. I did. So once it runs, now you also have another capability. So let me show this. So now certainly I can go into revenue if I wanted to, and I can visualize and do the check bar, right? That little checkbox, right? On the numerics, you have that capability. But I also have the capability within the style sheet to set that up in advance. So let me close the output. I actually have a compute here on line 32. I'm going to uncomment that, and it's pos neg. It's just taking revenue, and if it's over less than or equal to 2 million, it's positive. Otherwise, it's negative. And then let me uncomment out line 58. So I'm just going to say make the graph color silver. And if I run that, so it actually will set it up in advance. So it's already set up. The user didn't have to do the checkbox, and you can kind of see the positive and negative there, but the bars are silver on both sides. We're not indicating something separate. And I certainly can sort, and then you can see there's the positives, and as I scroll, there are the negatives, and I can go to the end so you can see the impact there. Now I also can control it a little bit further, and you might see the code this way. That's why I showcased it both different ways. You might see it as type data with the column, usually end notation. I put the actual column in the prior one. Type, graph type equal data is the key part there. Here I have graph color green, and then I have graph color neg, or you might even see graph neg color, and I put it to yellow in this case. But either way, it should be supported. But I've seen both ways in terms of that particular attribute. And if I run this, now you'll see, right, the positive is green, but the yellow is a negative. And actually, let's sort, because that'll make it a little bit more obvious in terms of, and yellow might not be the best color, but I did it because I can showcase when with the background color, the yellow stands out. That's kind of why I selected it and along to match with that. But again, it's not really about the color scheme. It's just demonstrating the capabilities and the features that are available to you. And that kind of, to me, made it stand out a bit. Now, what else can we control? So I can leave that in. I'm going to talk about styling. We're close to the end here, but I did want to mention some other capabilities. We'll do the styling, right? So there is a set AR style, and it helps if I spell it right, set. And I have one that I created called active report updated. So you can set the set command here. You can do it as an on-table set. I usually do it as a set command. And this has to be a CSS file. And we have, while you can control styling through the style sheet, there are some styling capabilities for active that can only be handled with a CSS class. We do document within our documentation for active Analytics Anywhere cascading style sheets, but we actually give you a sample that's available within the product. So if I come out to the hub, let me showcase that first. And let me go to application directories. And you can see I have internal directories displayed here. And I expanded Edit Home and Etsy. And then I went to AR_V2, AR version 2, and I expanded CSS. You'll see that there's an active report. So this is actually the one that I copied into Base App and made some changes. So just to edit, just for your reference, you can go through and you can see there's a lot of lines here, right? Over 1,000. But it gives you some idea of the control and the capabilities that you have if you wanted to leverage it. So I'm going to close this one out and showcase the one that I'm going to actually use, which is in Base App. So your CSS file for active does need to be on the app path, and Base App is on the app path. So I have this active report updated, and I'll edit it for the moment. But I'm just going to set it here, right, in the request, and I'm going to run it. And just so that you can see the impact. And again, I know it's a little probably hard on the eyes, but really what I impacted was the column titles here. You can see it has a pink background with yellow text, and notice the sort icons are red. Okay, that's what I impacted. That's the changes I made to the active report CSS file that I showed you that was available within the product, right? In the AR_V2 CSS subdirectory that I navigated to. So let me just close this out and then come back to the hub and actually showcase what I changed. So if you look here, you'll see here, for right at the very beginning, line 6 here, this is the section I impacted. And what I really did was a background dash color of pink with a color of yellow. So that's where I get the text of yellow and the background color of pink. Now your style sheet potentially could impact the styling of the color, like with titles and everything. So just be aware of it. But I wanted to showcase that you can control here. And then the other change I made was the arrow, right? The sword arrow. That's kind of cool, I thought. And again, I'm not going to go through all the stylings, but the capability, just to show you that you have a lot of control that you might not be aware of. But what I did was this was already available within that active report, and I kept it in my version. So the class of the AR-grid column sword icon, I added a color of red, and that's how I made it red. So again, the point of this demonstration is not to go through all the classes, but to show that you have that kind of capability and to look at the classes and see what you might need to impact to satisfy your business requirements and needs. Okay, really, I think so, and really that. But again, remember interaction with your style sheet as well. Always think about that. And there are some things that can only be controlled through the active classes in terms of styling. So I showcased what you can do in the style sheet, but there are a lot of other controls, like you saw with the sword icon, that you can only do through the cascading style sheet, right? The CSS file for active, and using AR style set command to point to it. All right, so let's come back to the request. And so besides that, what else do I have that I can control? Well, maybe you need this file if it's going to be distributed and sent, right, in disconnected mode to users. Maybe you're using Reportcaster for that distribution. What can you do to control from a security perspective? Maybe you don't want that information to be available. Maybe you want them to actually have a password in order to access it, just in case of anything, right? So we have the capability of saying AR password, and I'll just say ABC. This is an example. While the password is visible, right, in the FOCUS app, right, and you're seeing it here, when the output is generated, it will not be part of the file. It's actually encrypted with AES 256 encryption. So it is encrypted. They can search the file to find it, but the password might be here. But once the file is created, regardless, it's encrypted and they won't be able to access it. So I can certainly run that. And now when I run this output, it's going to prompt me for a password. And of course, my password is simple, but let me just say A and make it incorrect. It's going to tell me it's incorrect until I put the correct password in and say OK. And now I get my output. Now, of course, I can control it another level. Oops, sorry, hit enter. And control it another level by set AR expire. So there is an expire option. And you can do it by days or by a date. So if I do it by days, the way you have to do it is it can be a value from 1 to 999, so up to 3 digits, right, of the number of days. So I can say like 30 days, but you have to say the keyword days after it. And now when I run it, and I can supply my password, I'll get my output. But the key thing is, after 30 days, they won't be able to open this any longer. Even though they have the correct password, it will have expired, right? So the other option is a date. So I could also put here, like, 25/08/25. So for August 25th of 2025, would only put a 2-digit year there. And if I run that now, again, I still have to put my password in, right? I have AR password set up. Once I put my password in, it'll let me, and I can still open this file. Even if I save it a number of times, the file will expire after August 25th. So on August 26th, I'll no longer be able to access this. So those capabilities are there as well. Hopefully, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I know it's just an introduction and everything. And as I indicated, we are working on truly making this available through Designer UI. But recognize that while I showcased everything from a style sheet perspective here to review it, strictly for demo purposes. I could have set up separate style sheets, went in there. It just for the purposes of time, I did it this way. But recognize that you can certainly have a style sheet that has the code set up for you, and have different versions of those style sheets that can be selected depending on the needs for that particular request. But hopefully this demonstrated in a clear, concise way how you can achieve that now, even with Designer, by saving the style sheets as appropriate and then referencing those style sheets in Designer when you're generating your active requests, your Analytics Anywhere output. Any questions?
Nope, I don't see any
No?
questions yet.
Well, hopefully I think this is exciting. I know getting that type of customization and control, I think, is extremely important. I know recognizing that we do it through the user interface is important as well. But I thought this was a great time to go over these options so that you have it for reference and how you can accomplish that in Designer now. But we will make that process even easier in the future. So I thank you for your time. I truly do. Okay, and just give me a second here. I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Hey, thanks, Renee. That was great.
Thank you.
I like that the active report password, and I didn't know we could do all that.
Oh yeah, secure. But you need, and it is available in InfoAssist too on that advanced option control. You can do it there as well.
So that basically concludes our session. We're going to jump into the mainframe only part. So if you're not running Focus on the mainframe, feel free to drop off. If you do drop off, though, please fill out the survey that is available. There'll be a link when you exit the meeting. We look at those and review them and hopefully get information that you want from us. So we'll give everybody a chance to move over. If you're staying, great. If you're not, then hopefully we'll see you in September. Let me go share my screen. Okay. So on our mainframe only part of the session, I decided to talk about the different output formats that we have and how you're impacted if you're running these on the mainframe. Because if you run on Windows or Linux, you're running in an ASCII environment, but on the mainframe, you're running in an EBCDIC environment. And depending on the output type that you're creating, you have to know, is this a binary transfer or is this an ASCII transfer? So we're going to go review the different output format types quickly, and then we're going to go over some of the more common ones and what you need to do in order to view them properly as a final report. So we got all our outputs. So I was looking at this, and there's like some of these are like, where did these come from? Vistas, do you remember that? Lotus, format Lotus is still there, but it's been replaced with better things like defix. So to hold your data, we have on-table hold as hold name, and then your format type. We also have PC hold if you're running WebFOCUS or Focus Studio. PC hold will show you the output in a browser or in your client. If you're running Focus as a hub sub and you're doing a remote procedure, PC hold will then transfer the final answer set and transfer across the wire from wherever the host is, your server, to your client. Hold is available everywhere. The file is stored on the server. Hold to a data format will also create a corresponding master or synonym and access file if needed. Save is a different type of hold. So hold, the default format is internal or binary. Save saves the file as alpha. So it's going to be strictly text that you can read. So numeric data, if it's a D9.2, you will see it as 6 digits on the left of the decimal, and then 2 on the right for a total of the 9. Save B will also save, but it will save it as a binary format. Save and save B both will not create a master. So in the WebFOCUS world, if you're running, the default storage location is editemp, and then you can change it by using app hold and then put in a particular app name. App technology is available in mainframe Focus in the 7.7 and higher versions. App hold data, app name will only store the data in the app specified. And app hold meta will only store the synonyms and access files in the app mentioned, where app hold will store both of them in the app mentioned. If you're creating an output file and you want to see it, you might, in most cases for Focus users, you're going to have to do a dynamic allocate and create a permanent data set, put your output into that permanent data set, and then transfer it to your Windows box. These data output formats have no styling, no subtotals, no headers, no footers or storage, strictly data. Unstyled output, we have docwp and dhtml. So these are like the green screen. So when you're running on the mainframe and you're in hot screen, you get certain columns lining up. Docwp and dhtml will give you that type of output. So they're unstyled because you can't apply a style sheet to them. And then we have the full styling available. Excel, EXL2K, and all the EXL2K versions, EXL 9.7. If you're not at the newer versions, you really should get there, and then you can use the XLSX output format, which creates a true Excel output, which you can open. The XL2Ks create an HTML page equivalent of the Excel sheet, which, depending on your company settings, you may not be able to open because of security. And here's a couple of the old favorites. And now we're going to jump into the more common. No, we're not. We're going to do old dog, new tricks. So EXL07, now we have XLSX, COM-T, Tab-T. These are comma delimited or tab delimited files. The difference between the ones with the T's and the one without the T's is the T includes the column titles as the first row. If you're using those, you can do set p comma equals defix, and if there's any discrepancy when you try to report off of it, it will tell you the specific row and column that's having the problem, as opposed to not having it set, where you just get an error message saying, we had trouble reading the file. We got PPT, and now we have newer PPTX. And then we have a DATREC format. So the DATREC format is similar to internal, except now you will see missing flags. So all of your data that's missable, all the columns that have missing equals on in the master, when you go to the hold file, you will then see a flag. The flag is 0 or 1 saying that, even though this field has a value 0, well, the missing flag says, no, it's not really a 0, it's truly missing. And that's used for calculations like averages and min-max and those kind of things. We have XML, we have SQL script. SQL script is great if you're running against several tables in a relational database, because the SQL script will create the select statement to produce the output of a report, which then you can use in a join. It doesn't get any data back. It's just the SQL itself. You can use it in a join, and then it acts as a sub-select in your join. So it makes it a little more efficient, because then we can transfer the whole thing and send it to the relational database engine and let it do the work. Renee talked about active HTML. All right, so common favorites. This is where we get into what to do if you're running this and then you want to view the output. So alpha, it's a text, it's ASCII. So if you're looking at it on the mainframe, so you create an alpha file, you can go into ISPF, you can view it, everything's fine. You're going to see exactly what you would expect to see, readable data. There's no binary data. There's no numeric data that's stored in binary format. It's all readable. But if you want to then move it to your PC, you're going to have to do an ASCII transfer. Why? And I'm not going to jump there yet. I'll explain why in a second. HTML is also text. So if you browse it, you'll be able to read the HTML code that's in the file. But you won't be able to present it as HTML because directly on the mainframe, we don't have a web browser. We don't have an application server so that you can then read this file. Now, if you're running on USS, you might be running Liberty or WebSphere. Those then have browsers, and then you can probably read it through there. PDF is also text ASCII. Again, if you browse it, you're going to see numbers and letters and output. So it's readable. You might not understand it, but you can still look at it and view it and find, yeah, I mean, there's lots of positional parameters inside of it, but it's still readable. XLSX is purely binary. You can't even browse it on the mainframe to see what's in it. You have to download it and open it in Excel. COMT is text. It's a comma delimited file, so you can read all the values that are separated by the comma. And then there's tab T, which I have a question mark. So tab T uses the tab character as your delimiter. The tab character is control, carriage control, not carriage control, but it's one of the low values in the table, either the hex table, whether it's EBCDIC or ASCII, and it's an 05. So it's the value 5, the decimal value 5. So what would you think it would be? So it's a tab T, but I have an unprintable character that I can't read. So would I transfer this as text or would I transfer it as binary? Well, in this case, the only thing that is unreadable is the tab character. And fortunately, the control of 05, whether it's EBCDIC or ASCII, is a tab regardless. So when we transfer it as ASCII, we're going to translate all of the regular characters into their ASCII equivalent, but for any non-printable characters, we're not going to touch it. So the 05 will still transfer as an 05. So that's why we transfer this as text. So to recap all that, for FTP, when you do an ASCII transfer, you're going from EBCDIC on the mainframe. Any EBCDIC character goes through a translation table, and all of the characters will get translated into their equivalent ASCII values. Any unprintable characters, like a tab, will keep its value. In this case, it's a hex 05. Binary transfers will move to the client through the FTP process as is. There's no translation going on. So what this means is if I have the letter A in EBCDIC, it's a C1. When I transfer it, it will still be a C1 if I do a binary transfer. But in ASCII, a C1 is really a Latin capital A with an acute accent. The real capital A would be hex 41 in ASCII. So when you do the ASCII transfer, we'll translate the C1 into a 41. So those are the differences between the ASCII and binary transfers. And that's all I wanted to go over. I just want to make sure when you transfer these things, the HTML, you transfer it to your PC. It has give it an HTML or HTML extension, and then when you open it, the file association will open it with either Chrome or Edge or whatever else you're using for your browser. Any questions? and they're still quiet. All right. So again, thank you all for coming. Please remember to fill out your surveys. I hope you learned something. Let me stop my sharing. I think I did. All right.
Good.
All right. That's it. Thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next month.